I'm Dave Tussing, and you're listening to George Fox Talks Leadership. And we're off.
Nice.
Brittney, it's really good to see you today. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been a while that we've been trying to coordinate this. Things in my life happened, and that's real life. So
Yeah, same.
But we're here today. I just want to start out talking about our journey. It's been kind of interesting. We've known each other a really long time, actually.
We have.
And we started at the same company working together a while ago. I won't even say how long ago.
Yeah. I don't even know how many years ago.
It was a while ago.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
Yeah.
And then we left that company in different times and ended up at another company together again.
Yep.
Very cool.
It was really cool.
Doing similar work. And for both of us, I think what's cool about that is that we have different journeys. We began in that sort of work, but we've gone kind of different ways. And especially you have really had a cool career journey, and you're continuing to explore that. And you're leading the way for others to kind of think about career in a different way.
Yeah.
And how leaders at companies can support and encourage people to find what they love to do and are great at doing, as opposed to just doing something that we sometimes find ourselves doing. So maybe you just can talk a little about your journey to date and what you're doing today, and then we can dive into the other stuff we want to talk about.
Yeah. Oh man. I went to college for an accounting degree.
So did I.
I thought that was a really nice, stable approach to starting my career. Was I interested in accounting? Looking back, I think, it brought me somewhere. I wasn't totally interested in it, but it brought me somewhere. And it brought me to my first job, meeting you. And I was thinking about pursuing my CPA, and I didn't. And, I didn't really know where I wanted to go. And after I, traversed a career for 4 years, I decided I want to do something different. And then in that company, just had like 9 different roles, worked abroad for 6 years, held assignments in like 15 countries. Like,
super cool opportunity.
Yeah, like got so many chances and took a really like meandering career path. And I think I just followed those nudges, and the creative impulses and charismatic leaders that I wanted to be involved with. And it's been a fruitful journey. And then I recently left that company. I just had a yearning in my soul. Like there's a really cool, he's a psychoanalyst and Jungian analyst, and his name's James Hollis, and he writes about your soul's appointment, like what is your soul's appointment? And I felt like there was some appointment and I wanted to figure it out. So I left that company 6 months ago, and I'm finding myself on that meandering, uncertain journey again, but it's just really exciting. And I think following your heart and following your creativity and your passions is the way to go. Yeah.
Something we had talked about yesterday that is maybe a cue when you're on that vein of like, okay, this is kind of what I'm wired for, is the flow state.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how that has helped guide you and what that kind of means to you, and what other people, if they're not familiar with that, can learn about it.
Yeah. I'm pretty fascinated with flow. It was created by a Czech. He has a really complicated name.
Yeah.
And he just passed. So,
I saw that.
Yeah. He kind of founded this idea of flow state. And it's really when you're in the zone. Athletes talk about being in the zone. It's like where your mind shuts off and you're just like in this like creative drive it's where innovation is born, And McKinsey did a study, like a 10-year study, and they found that when people were in flow, they were 500% more productive.
I can feel that sometimes.
Yeah. And you
I'm
can.
in the zone. I'm like,
yeah,
crushing it today.
It's the best feeling, right?
Yeah.
And I have felt that many times. And now that I've since left this other company, I feel it a lot. Like I feel it when I'm writing. I feel it when I'm learning.
Yeah, I read something you wrote just yesterday that was, I think, stemmed from that psychologist you had mentioned, and it was really well written.
Yeah.
And I could tell that you were in the flow.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a no thinking state, you know? Yeah.
Well, that's really, really cool. What do you if you're giving advice to somebody who's earlier in their career trying to think about what should I start out doing? Where do I want to go? I mean, is there any really wrong place to start necessarily, or just start somewhere that you can get a foothold and then, figure it out from there, what you're doing well at and enjoying and not? I mean, I'm just curious how you would advise someone.
I would say definitely just start where you're at. Like I started in accounting with a very rational point of view, but look at where it got me. So, I think like what you said, like it's not, you don't have to have like all the answers, and you don't have to know. But I do think that like, and we've talked about this too, that like employers, because it's hard when you're a college student, you're trying to pick a major and and that's supposed to be your life for like 30 years, but the world has changed and you can switch your career path. You can do whatever you want, and I think that that's important. Like nothing is set in stone. Like pursue what your heart is telling you to pursue and know that you can always change it.
Yeah.
And it like the journey's leading you somewhere, follow the breadcrumbs, it's leading you somewhere.
Yeah. I started out doing mechanical engineering and then switched over to computer science because I liked the computers.
Yeah.
I added a history minor because I liked history.
Yeah.
Then I was like, oh, maybe I need to be able to get a job. At that time, the dot-com bubble blew up. So it wasn't an easy time to get a job as a like computer science person. So then I added accounting.
Yeah, stable.
It was very stable. And I enjoyed it and got into that sort of thing a bit further, but then have shifted many, many ways. And a lot of that was very technical orientation. But over the years, I've really gotten more attuned to like people and working with people and helping lead and develop people. And that's where I've really found something that I've enjoyed. But it's the opposite end of the spectrum from like programming something.
Yeah.
by myself on a keyboard.
Totally.
I just wandered all through, and I'm still working on figuring that stuff out.
Yeah, like I went back to school this year too to pursue learning about psychology, like something that awesome. I never thought I would do. And now I'm 38, back in school and with people that are like in their 20s getting their masters. And it's cool, it's like it's unique to be learning. And I'm not alone, there's people in their 50s that are in this program and changing their life and changing their career. So you just never know.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Maybe talk a little more about the workplace of the future and how it is changing. You kind of started to hint at that, but what are you seeing in leadership characteristics and qualities that are where we need to go to help people be their best at work?
Yeah. I think, when our parents were working, it was, and still now, it's like very much the masculine and not like gender, but like masculine principles of leadership, like not in the negative way, but just like bravado and, I can't even think
strength.
Of it. Yes, strength, courage, grit, steadfastness, like
don't show
speed.
Emotion, maybe don't show emotion.
like really kind of more like hard, like characteristics. And I feel like we're kind of like going into a new era where it's more like feminine qualities, like compassion, nurturing, listening, like deep listening skills, connection with other people, like things like that. I think are what is going to make like the leader of the future. I hope.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, I'm navigating kind of that myself, like the balance of leading and driving something to get it done.
Yeah.
But involving people and the team and listening to include lots of different points of view and really figure it out together, but still then move it along. Like that balance. And in the past, it was sometimes just more of one and left some other things that are really valuable to the side.
Yeah, totally. And like feminine principles are also related to creativity, like allowing things to be non-linear, because we're such a linear like culture, and the corporate world is like so linear. You have to have this job and then you progress to this job and this job and then you eventually go here, and like projects are run like that. Everything, our education system is run like that. but like there's also this need to kind of be in flow and like flow non-linearly, you know, in layers and spirals, you know, and like approach things from a different mindset, or at least have the awareness of that. Is I think it's going to make work better and like projects actually more efficient, and when there is that right balance, you know?
Yeah. I'm just kind of, as you're saying those things, thinking it's like for me trying to use both sides of my brain, left and right, because I'm typically quite logical and linear.
Yeah.
The computer science and accounting background, but then the history and like biblical studies side of my mind, and then like caring about the people is not so linear.
No.
And it's very like, what's going on with this group of people and this culture, and why are they doing that type of stuff? So I'm trying to like merge both of those in my brain, and then figure out how to operate that way as a leader, and help other people along the journey. But I think when people are like whole brain thinking and acting, they'll be their best self.
Yes. That reminds me of my journey too. Like I'm very analytical, linear, accounting background, consulting, you know, very like masculine kind of principles. And now I'm like dabbling in psychology and in-depth psychology and spirituality. And like that, it's also helping me like merge these two parts of myself. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think another article that we had both read recently and talked about was, it was a McKinsey article about just the great attrition, and some companies are losing a lot of people, but it's also an opportunity to attract people. So as we're designing actually like workplaces and cultures in the future, maybe you can talk a little more about the sort of things people are looking for now, or what people are doing in their lives now as they're kind of reevaluating these things for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the future of work is like the billion trillion dollar question right now, you know, like what is it?
Yeah.
And I think nobody really knows. And I think we're going to have to figure it out together. I think there's some cool things happening out there, like in terms of how workplaces are being designed for diversity and neurodiversity, and how not everybody is really efficient sitting at a desk or like sitting in open concepts, or some people like different types of lighting, different acoustics, you know, there's all different ways that you can physically design for a wide set of people and be very like equitable in your design. I think what I'm interested about in the future of work is also just like the human side. Like right now we're in this mode of like back to back meetings, you know, and and we know like neuroscience has proven like you can't actually you can't do this. Like it's not sustainable, you know, like it's not good for your brain.
Right.
It's not good for productivity. Like, and speaking again about flow, what are the things that interrupt flow? Emails, Slack notifications, text messages, interruptions, you know?
The context switching cost is really high. And just the distraction and then getting back is like, ooh, I think there's a lot of studies that show that it's a pretty big impact.
Huge impact. Yeah. And so it's like, what is that? How can we strike that balance? Because it's obviously not working for people. There's a lot of burnout, you know?
Yeah.
I also just think people are waking up to this sense of like, what is my meeting? Like, what's calling me? What is worthy of spending my time and energy on? You know, what wants to pour forth through me? You know, like what is my like divine calling in this life? You know, and I think people are really asking themselves that and reevaluating their lives. And oftentimes your calling doesn't have to be related to your vocation or how you financially earn. So it's like, what in and outside of work can I start doing to cultivate this within myself, you know, and live a more full, meaningful life. So,
and I think something you mentioned there too, there's lots of different ways to do it. It could be finding a job that does that, or it could be finding a way to make a living so that you can, you know, have basic needs met, but then have a lot more time set aside to do that stuff in a non-paid context, but you could be volunteering or doing a really lot of stuff.
Going to school.
And there's a lot of different ways that people could do that. And I think for quite a long time, it was just, like you said earlier, you go to college or whatever it is, you go do this job and do it for a long time, and you're kind of like, then that's that. But there can be a lot more. And I think there are a lot more avenues now to serve or do things beyond just making a living. But sometimes people do find that they can make a living and do both. So that's great too.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think employers should try to nurture that,
right.
and nurture a non-linear career path. Right. Don't make people like follow this prescriptive plan if it's not good for them, because then they'll end up leaving anyway and taking all their, intellectual property knowledge somewhere else. So
I just was reading an article yesterday that was a really good one. There's a big company. A lot of people would know the name, but I'm not going to say it. But there was a manager. She was great at her job, leading a bunch of people, but she found out, like, I don't really love this leading big teams. I love being creative and doing something specific. And so she had shared that with her boss, who was then saying, let's get a new person into your team who you think could take over this leadership role. Yeah. Bring them in, train them up, and then they can take your job, and then you could take a new job. And they really wanted to keep that person around. So they were so creative with what they did for her because she was great. They wanted to make this work. And it was great. The person they brought in really wanted to do this sort of a big leadership role. And then the person got to go be like this creative expert in more of an individual contributor role. And that's the sort of thing that I think you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I think a lot of people aren't at the right company. They're in the wrong seat.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. So
that's really interesting. Well, I mean, there's a lot going on. As you were talking about values and kind of figuring some of this out, we had talked a little about some activities that you've done and that you coach people on and teach them. Maybe you can talk a little about some of this personal practice, this journaling exercise.
Oh yeah, should we go in the journaling exercise?
I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, so I teach a program called Search Inside Yourself. So it was developed at Google, and it's all about mindfulness and emotional intelligence, and specifically marketed to like corporations and people and teams. And there's a cool exercise in there that I think is valuable to revisit every like 6 to 8 months. And it is a values exercise. So discerning what your values are, because your values, whether you're conscious of it or not, are informing your decisions and your behavior and things like that. So this is the exercise. Yeah. You choose 3 to 5 people. They can be any sort of person, like famous, fictitious, anybody that you really admire. Like something about them really speaks to you. And then for each of those people, you look at what are the characteristics of that person, in which kind of situations are they displaying these qualities that I really admire, and do a reflection, a journaling exercise on that. And then from there, you kind of review what you've written and distill from that 5 values that you think you hold dear. Because oftentimes people that we hold in high esteem, people that we admire, they are actually exemplifying pieces of us that we want to integrate, like things that we value. And so it's kind of just a way to draw a parallel between that. So then you land at your 5 values, and that's it. That's basically the exercise. Yeah.
And share it and talk
about it. Yeah.
And then, like you said, which is great, you can reflect on it later on and see if it still holds true, or if as your life changes, some of those may change. And once it's been powerful for me, because once I really have understood my values, then I can start making changes and decisions about like, what am I doing and why? Is this really something I care about and want to invest, my time, talent, and energy into, or not? And so then you have a good reason and can explain it to yourself and other people too. And it feels a lot better too if you're living in alignment with your values.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I had done that exercise and a different version of it, a lot of different versions. Yeah. There's like Brené Brown has one.
There's a lot out there.
That's Dare to Lead. But I like this one that you had. It's really practical and specific, because the Brené Brown one's like a list of like a boatload of words and values, which is cool. And you kind of pick through
things that resonate with you.
But this one, when I was thinking, I was like, oh, let's just for fun think of 3 people that I would pick.
Yeah.
So for me, kind of not a mix. I'm proud of it, actually. It's like Jesus, my dad, and David Robinson.
Nice.
I'm a Christian, and so Jesus is a very important figure in my life. I strive to live as he did as best I can. My dad, some people have good relationships with their dad. I'm fortunate I did.
That's good.
And so I learned a lot by watching and seeing him, how he struggled through adversity. And David Robinson. I just grew up playing basketball and liked that guy a lot.
I like that guy too.
Good character, great player, hard work ethic. It wasn't about him.
Yeah.
He lived his values out.
He really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was just like grounded, you know? Yeah.
So I was like, I kind of laughed, David Robinson, but I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going with David Robinson.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So I don't know if you don't need to share yours, but I figured I would just go for it.
Yeah, no, I'll share one of my values that I found like doing this exercise while I was at a career that I wasn't really feeling in alignment with. And one of them was creativity. And I really love creative people that write a lot or speak a lot and like use their creativity to help others. And I realized, I'm not doing that, you know, like I'm not exercising that value in my life in like any way really, you know, like I was really just following demands and tasks and like my creativity felt so limited and stifled. And that was a catalyst for me to like make new decisions, you know? And
totally. I mean, this is not a critique of accounting, but in general, that people don't look highly on creative accounting. I think that gets people in trouble sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah, no,
I think of Enron when I think of creative accounting. So that's a good thing that you weren't as creative when you were doing that. But I agree, once you branch out, it's a great value. And I think that totally shows up the way you talked about kind of the different things you've done in your career over the last few years and where you're going now. And, and as you're venturing out to be more independent, extremely creative. It's all on you, and you can really unleash kind of your creative genius, which is great.
Yeah, and it's been so like fun and energizing, and really something that I found I was missing, you know? So, yeah.
So that's where you're kind of finding some flow state then.
Exactly.
That's good. So this other exercise that you were talking about is the envisioning journal exercise, which I did not do, but I'd love to hear more about it because as you described it, it's a really cool one.
This one's cool. And, you know, also coming from, this comes from a lot of different schools of thought too. Like it's about looking into your future. It can be 5, it can be 10, it can be 2 years, however far you think you want to go. And you imagine like, if everything went like as it should, as I believe it should, you know, or if there was not a lot of not adversity, but
sure. If I could just wave a magic wand.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. You take the words out of my mouth. Wave a magic wand. Like, what would my life look like? You know, what would I be doing? How would I be acting? Maybe like, what would others be perceiving in me?
Sure.
And write it from the first person. So like, I am the owner of a purposeful, prosperous business. I am living in Spain. Like, and go from that vantage point and see what comes up. Yeah. Do it for like, journal for like 7 minutes, like stream of consciousness journaling where you're not putting the pen down, where you're just kind of like going for it and see what comes up. Yeah.
That's a good one. I haven't done it quite like that, but kind of similar.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I've always been wired to think like all the way to the end. And so I'm like, all right, what do I want to do 5 years, like 10 years from now, you know, where would I want to be if I'm retired? Like, what could that look like? You know, do I want to have kids and grandkids, or is that not for me? You know, all these sort of things I've thought about probably more than I need to over the years. But it's been helpful. And then it's kind of reflecting along the way. Should we make a shift from that? Or is that still something I care about? And then that paired with the values exercise is really good, because then you can be like, is that something I even care about at all or not? And you know, if somebody's thinking about kind of even tying it back earlier to the work thing, is this a job that I want to keep doing, and would I still be happy in it 5 years from now? Does it like lead to where I want to end up 20 years from now or not? Those are good questions people should ask themselves.
Those are really good questions. Yeah. And like, if one of your values is to be of service and you're not doing that, what could that look like in 5 years? And that could be in a job or out of a job, you know?
I had a coach, I had done kind of a different values assessment probably 5 or 6 years ago at work. And they said, you're not really seeming to get to live out this aspect of service in the way you'd like to. And they said, I sure hope you have another outlet outside of work that you can live that out, because otherwise you're going to be pretty unhappy.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. I am thankful I have some other outlets, you know, some church stuff, some other things, you know, working with kids in sports. But You can't necessarily have all your kind of values met in one place like we're talking about. And so it's good to think about it more broadly for your whole life. And that's okay. I think sometimes people may even put too much on a job to meet all their needs, and our life is well beyond that.
Yeah, like their purpose is wrapped up in their work, and their job.
I think that's unfortunate when that happens, because our identity is not our job.
Exactly. It's so much broader than that. I think it's our identity and who we are is broader than even we can imagine,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, I think that's a solid place to end, and a good place. You've given people some good exercise to kind of think about that, their values, what their life could be, exploring, what their identity is and their vocation. So a lot of good stuff. And I hope that people can put this to practice, and maybe tell me a little more, like what you're doing out there next. And if people can find more about you online and follow some of your stuff, because you're really starting to create a little bit of a footprint and of some great stuff. More in this vein, helping people figure this stuff out. Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably most active on LinkedIn, so you can follow me there.
That's good. Good start.
Yeah.
I just did follow you yesterday.
Oh, nice. And then I have a website that I do some blogging on, and I'm making my way.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I do some coaching and things like that.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Brittney. It was awesome to have you here today.
And thanks.
I know that people that listen are gonna be equipped with some good tools, and I hope they get a lot out of this.
Yeah, same.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Big thanks to George Fox Digital for producing this podcast. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to the George Fox Talks podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you stream from. And if you want to dig in more to this stuff or see what else George Fox Community is talking about, check out georgefox.edu/talks, or by searching on YouTube for George Fox Talks.